What up, YouTube? Here with a post-fight video of the Emanuel Navarette versus Robson Conceicao fight. Now, before I give y'all the summary of what happened in the fight, I'm going to tell you the results first. This fight ended in a majority draw. It was a close competitive bout. I personally had the fight score 113 to 113, a draw. If it wasn't for the two knockdowns that happened in the 4th round and the 7th round, then it would have been 115 to 113 in favor of Conceicao. However, because those two knockdowns did happen, that's why this fight ended in a majority draw, with one of the judges having to score 114 to 112 in favor of Emanuel Navarette, while the other two judges had this fight scored 113 even, a draw. And to sum up what happened in the fight, based on the official scorecards and the result of this fight, should go to tell y'all that this fight was a close and competitive bout. It was surely entertaining. It was definitely the best bout on the card that was featured that night, because this was the co-feature bout to the Shakur Stevenson versus Edwin De Los Santos fight, and that fight was heavily criticized due to the fact that the style of the fight that was shown that night was declared boring to majority of the viewers that tapped in to that fight. But if they saw this fight with Navarette and Conceicao, then this fight surely should have made up for the disappointing fight that the fans complained about with Shakur Stevenson and Edwin De Los Santos. And Robson Conceicao, he is one of the more experienced fighters at super featherweight. He's a decorated amateur, former Olympian, a successful one as well. And he's had title shots in the past before. He's fought Shakur Stevenson, and Shakur Stevenson won that fight. And he's also fought Oscar Valdez, and that was considered a controversial fight when Conceicao got in there with Valdez, because I made a post-fight video when that fight happened, and I thought Robson Conceicao should have walked away as the winner of that fight, and that was prior to Valdez getting in there with Shakur Stevenson before Shakur Stevenson moved up to lightweight, and that's a division where Shakur Stevenson competes at right now, and that's the current division where he holds the WBC lightweight title. Now he's a 2-divisional champion, and Oscar Valdez still competes at super featherweight. Navarette, before fighting Robson Conceicao in his defense of the WBO super featherweight title, he fought Oscar Valdez last, where he won a hard-fought victory. However, it was a decisive one where Emanuel Navarette got over on Oscar Valdez via decision. And Robson Conceicao, this was yet another title shot for him, and he fought better this time than when he got in there with the likes of Shakur Stevenson. And this fight ended in a draw, unlike the loss that he suffered when he got in there with Oscar Valdez. This fight reminded me more of Conceicao's game performance versus Oscar Valdez than his more clear defeat when he got in there with Shakur Stevenson. And this fight didn't end with Robson Conceicao losing. It ended in a majority draw. Now, as I said, if he weren't to get dropped in this fight, then he would have walked out as the winner and the new WBO super featherweight champion. And to be more descriptive of how this fight went, Emanuel Navarette has a reputation of starting somewhat late, and his volume and his work rate and his awkward style that is difficult for his opponents to fight against helps make up for that attribute that Emanuel Navarette has been criticized for. And this was a case in this fight as well, because prior to the first knockdown happening in the fourth round, it was Robson Conceicao that was having his way. Emanuel Navarette, he couldn't get in rhythm, and he couldn't step on the gas pedal fully, and whenever he did, and he would overstep with his offense and get overtly aggressive, then Robson Conceicao would make Navarette pay by capitalizing from the mistakes that Navarette was making when he would look to launch his offense. And that goes to show Robson Conceicao's technical abilities and his experience factor displaying very well when it comes to that factor in the game as well, with Robson Conceicao being a very sharp and very well-aware fighter that could counter from the mistakes that his opponents make. And Navarette isn't known to have such a high technical style. As I said, he's got an awkward style. He's more of a lengthy fighter that works off of volume, and he likes to walk through his opponent's shots and wear his opponents out with his pressure, his volume, and his aggression, and his power as well. And he throws from awkward angles where his opponents have a hard time at telegraphing where Navarette is throwing his shots from. And Navarette, because Conceicao would be stationary and he would stand his ground whenever Navarette would look to press forward, and him planting his foot to the canvas and still mating Navarette with fire for fire, that would have Navarette backing off of the aggressive style that Navarette is used to fighting in. And he couldn't get his combination fluctuating earlier in the rounds. However, after he scored the knockdown in the fourth round, that's when Navarette started to find his groove and fight like his usual self. We started to see more signs of Navarette getting in tune with his style from about the third round and on. And then he started to get his combinations flowing after he was able to close the gap between him and Conceicao. And that's how he was able to land combinations of punches that had Conceicao hitting the canvas, and it all came from a lead hook that landed flush on Conceicao that had rocked Conceicao, and then that helped Navarette close the distance and go in for the kill and throw flurries of shots that would result in Conceicao being knocked down. And Conceicao, much to his credit, he had an incredible bounce back round the next round, because the fifth round, after the fourth round where he had tasted the first knockdown in the fight, he was still able to maintain his composure, and he was calm. He was still able to telegraph the offense, and Navarette looking to pick up from where he left off at, and he was accurate in this fight as well, and consistently all throughout the whole 12 rounds. Navarette has never been hit with as many jabs in his career prior to fighting Robson Conceicao. I think Robson Conceicao landed, over 100 jabs versus Emanuel Navarette in this fight. And if you look at the punch stats, Conceicao was the more accurate puncher in this fight. Conceicao was landing the more cleaner, crisp shots. Navarette definitely showed the power advantage in this fight, because Navarette, as he looked more comfortable, as the fight went towards the latter rounds because the pressure and the aggressive style of Navarrete started to catch up to Robson Conceicao towards the latter end of the fight. And it started from the mid-round and on. And Conceicao, he shows signs of being worn out and tired and fatigued because not only the shots that was landing flush on Robson Conceicao throughout the fight from, I would say, the third round and on, and as well as Emanuel Navarrete being able to walk through the shots that Conceicao was countering him with. And that was not only a shot at Conceicao's confidence, not saying that Navarrete walking through Conceicao's shots rattled his confidence or his game plan, because Conceicao was still able to be consistent with his game plan. And as I had said, he did a good job at maintaining his composure throughout the whole fight. And he fought a brilliant and a very smart strategic fight throughout the whole fight. And it was just the fact that Navarrete is very durable and he has a very well observant reaction to his opponent's shots. And also Navarrete, he is good at level changing, and it's been displayed throughout his whole career. And he likes to attack downstairs and upstairs. And Navarrete showed that in this fight, because in the 7th round, unlike the first knockdown that happened in the 4th, the second knockdown came from a clean right hand that landed flush on the body of Robson Conceicao, and Robson Conceicao hit the canvas for the second time. However, much like the bounce back round from the first knockdown, in the 8th round, Robson Conceicao would come back yet again and win the next following round from the prior round where he had got knocked down at. And that goes to show y'all the gameness, the resilience, the fortitude of Robson Conceicao, and him not giving up and showing his will to fight and his want and his hunger to win a title at super featherweight. And Emanuel Navarrete, as I have said, this was, I would say, without a doubt, the most competitive fight that I've seen Navarrete compete in. And Robson Conceicao is definitely one of the top contenders at super featherweight. And the super featherweight division right now has got a good scene going on. Currently, there is no unified champions at super featherweight. There's been a new champion crowned. The new WBA super featherweight champion is Lamont Roach Jr. He defeated Hector Luis Garcia on the undercard to David Benavidez versus Demetrius Andrade. And that fight ended in a split decision with Lamont Roach Jr. coming out victorious and becoming the new WBA super featherweight champion. And that was a close competitive bout as well. And Lamont Roach Jr. is a young fighter. And with Lamont Roach Jr. being promoted with PBC, that title unification bout would be more of a difficult fight to make happen for Emanuel Navarrete if Emanuel Navarrete is looking to unify any of the titles at super featherweight, because he's the only champion that is promoted by Top Rank. And there's O'Shaquie Foster, who's the current WBC super featherweight champion. I would say he is the best super featherweight in the world right now at that division, because he's fought there more and longer than Emanuel Navarrete has. Emanuel Navarrete is the better fighter on paper, has more experience at championship level. However, when it comes to super featherweight boxing, Emanuel Navarette's accomplishment at featherweight and at super bantamweight doesn't it plays a factor to his overall career. However, this is relatively a new weight class that Emanuel Navarrete is fighting at. Hence why I would rank O'Shaquie Foster above Emanuel Navarrete when it comes to the rankings at super featherweight. And O'Shaquie Foster, he is with the Zone and not PBC, and as well as Joe Cordina, who had a majority decision win over Edward Vasquez a month ago, and he's the current IBF super featherweight champion, and he's promoted by Matchroom, and he fights on the Zone as well. The title unification bout that would be most likely to happen at super featherweight would be a bout between O'Shaquie Foster and Joe Cordina. And most likely, and the fair route to go as far as the future goes for Emanuel Navarrete would be a rematch versus Robson Conceicao. And I wouldn't mind seeing them go at it again because of how close and competitive and how entertaining this fight was with these two high-level fighters. And as I have said, they produced a very compelling bout, and I'm sure we're gonna see something of that liking if they were to have yet another fight. And I want to see what adaptations that these two fighters are going to make if they do in fact have a immediate rematch. And Emanuel Navarrete, I don't know who else they would have him defend the WBO super featherweight title against. If I look at the WBO rankings right now, Archie Sharp is the number one ranked contender when it comes to the WBO super featherweights, and he's not that well known. He's a local fighter out there in the UK. He's undefeated and he's an up and coming prospect, and that wouldn't call for a much of a attraction bout for a well-known name like Emanuel Navarrete. And if you go look at the WBO rankings right now, when it comes to the super featherweight division, you won't see Robson Conceicao ranked amongst the top 10 contenders by the WBO, and that's the belt that Emanuel Navarrete holds right now. And then the next best ranked contender is Oscar Valdez, and Emanuel Navarrete already defeated him, and I don't think that fight was a much of a close competitive bout as this fight was. And Emanuel Navarrete was, in fact, the clear winner in that fight. And that's why I don't think a rematch with Oscar Valdez is necessary. And then you look at Lamont Roach Jr., who's ranked amongst the top 10 by the WBO, and I have mentioned because of the promotional differences, that would be a harder fight to make than a in-house fight with a Robson Conceicao, and I'm quite sure that there's no interest with Top Rank or Emanuel Navarrete's camp to want to have another fight versus Oscar Valdez. And then there's a Puerto Rican fighter who is the current WBO Intercontinental Super Featherweight Champion. He's amongst the top 10 WBO Super Featherweights right now. His name is Brian Chavaler. He only has one defeat in his pro boxing career, and that came from way early in his career, before he was as experienced as he is. He's not that much of a well-recognized name amongst the public and as well as boxing fans as well. And that's why a more marketable fight would be another fight versus Robson Conceicao. And that does it for this post-fight video. You let me know what your opinions are from this fight that y'all saw with Emanuel Navarette and Robson Conceicao. Comment y'all thoughts in the comments, and if y'all got a video sharing y'all thoughts and y'all want me to check y'all channel out, I won't be bothered by that, and I'll be more than glad to take a look at y'all channel. And y'all could subscribe to this channel and share this content, like this video if y'all want, and hit the links in the description to show y'all support for this channel. Anything will be appreciated. And I'm out of here, y'all. Be good. Peace.